Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here. I have a interesting guest today, Pete Kennedy, who is a consultant and is a lawyer who works with the Weston A Price Association. And he is going to jump on and chat with us about the Prime Act, which is a federal law that's looking to be passed that would help small farmers be able to sell their meat to consumers through more avenues and be able to send those through custom slaughterhouses and still be able to sell those direct to consumers. So go ahead, listen to this. It's about a 15-20 minute episode. And again, we encourage you to go to the show notes, contact your Congress person and senators, and make sure that they know that you want them to support this. The more right now is a super key time as we're trying to get it included in the 2023 Farm Bill. So it's important over the next day or two for you to do that. Reach out, give a couple of phone calls, and I have done those phone calls earlier today. I'm not saying that they were especially effective, but we did make the phone calls and reached out and let those our congressmen and senators know about that. So appreciate your time, guys, and yeah, give those a calls and listen to Pete chat with me a little bit more about this. All right, cool. So why don't we start? Pete, give me a little bit of a intro for like who you are, what you do, and yeah, a little bit about your background.
Okay, I'm an attorney. I work for the Weston Price Foundation as a consultant, mainly work on food freedom type legislation and policy, raw milk bills, custom slaughter, just bills that deregulate local producer to consumer sales as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. And you have a background that how many years have you been working in the food freedom space?
A little over 20 years.
Okay.
I started, for Weston Price back in 2003.
Gotcha. So talk to us a little bit about, what is the state of meat processing right now in the U.S.?
Well, it's the biggest obstacle to having just a prosperous local food system right now. Just to give you an example, when the Wholesome Meat Act was passed 60 years ago, there were about 9,600 slaughterhouses in the country right now. The population at that time was about 200 million. Today, we have 335 million in the country, and there are less than 3,000 slaughterhouses. So just the lack of local slaughterhouse infrastructure is just the biggest obstacle to having the local food system we all want right now.
Mm-hmm. And because of those limited amount of slaughterhouses, what does that mean for small farmers?
It means they have a tough time getting access to slaughterhouses to process their animals. I mean, there are three types of slaughterhouses. There's a federally USDA slaughterhouses, inspected slaughterhouses, and inspected means an inspector is there present for the slaughtering and processing of the animal. There are state inspected slaughterhouses where the animal process can only be sold within a state. And then there are custom houses where the animal that's slaughtered and processed must go back to the owner. The owner cannot sell that animal, can give it to family, non-paying guests, and employees. And there's just 20 states don't have their own meat inspection program, so they only have federally inspected slaughterhouses. So there's a big shortage in those states, like Florida, where I am. We have no state meat inspection program. By my count, there might be half a dozen, maybe 8 slaughterhouses in the whole state that a small rancher would have access to.
And Florida's a big state.
Yeah, it's a huge. From the tip of the Keys up to Pensacola is probably over 800 miles.
Yeah.
So we have a big cattle industry in this state, but they finish the animals up in the Midwest and the Great Plains. So the big, the big cattle ranchers don't need slaughterhouses in Florida because they finish elsewhere, the animals elsewhere. So just what happens is you get these shortages. There's still areas of the country. I was talking to someone from New York the other day where they have to book 2 years in advance. So if you're
Mhm.
processing hogs where you need to slaughter them within 6 months or so, that doesn't pencil out.
Yeah, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
And the cost too. I mean, the cost for for the farmer is typically almost 10x what it would cost Smithfield or one of the big packers.
Right. And just one of the thing, so yeah, to get to the Prime Act, their expenses the inspected slaughterhouses have that they have to pass on. I mean, one of these is a food safety plan called a HACCP plan, and I know Joel Salatin has said that would that alone would cut 30% of the cost if a rancher could take their animals to a custom slaughterhouse and be able to sell those animals. But the
Correct.
problem is when you go to a custom house right now, you can sell a live animal in most states, it's, the way it happens, it's just among a few people. And then, yeah, just the trouble with that is a lot of the consumers who want to buy meat don't have the money to buy, say, a quarter animal, and then they might not have the freezer space. So they're just, in a lot of states, the small farmers and ranchers have a limited market, which is because of the deficient slaughterhouse infrastructure, among other things.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, like, let's just talk about some scenarios that this really starts to have problems. Let's say you have a downed cow, which, has some sort of like, maybe has a cesarean, couldn't save the mom. Instead of being able to get that into a slaughterhouse to be able to make hamburger out of her, you just can't get into a slaughterhouse. And so that could be a problem. So there's a number of things because of the wait time, because of the cost, that it makes it harder for farmers. I think you touched on something there too, the consumer. So the consumer, as you said, they may not have a deep freeze. They may not want a quarter cow because they just may not need to understand how to eat through all those different cuts.
And just, yeah, the consumers want quality meat. They want to buy direct from a farmer. And one of the big falsehoods that's being perpetrated by the people who oppose the Prime Act, which again would allow the sale of custom meat, is that it's not safe. And just the Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance out of Texas submitted a FOIA request finding out how many illnesses were attributed to meat from consumed from a custom house over an 8-year period. The answer came back 0. And just Weston Price has this expert microbiologist who works on food safety cases, who found some data from like 2005 to 2020. There are over 6,000 illnesses attributed to beef and pork consumption in the country, and those are coming from the big plants. We just have a very top-heavy system right now. It's just highly centralized in production. There's a USDA document that indicates the top 52 USDA plants in the country are responsible for almost 93% of the cattle slaughtered. And I think it's the top 60 plants account for nearly 98% of the hogs slaughtered in this country.
Wow.
So it's just, yeah, one of the big things people pay attention to is food security, and how secure is your food supply when you have that few plants producing the lion's share of the meat.
Well, and I think we saw this particularly during the pandemic, and I think that's why there started to be some discussion on the federal level, and that's why there's actually something happening now, because of the plants were getting shut down during COVID, or they weren't tooled to have the right products or be able to process the right animal. And that's why they literally were dumping entire houses of hogs or entire houses of chickens, because they just couldn't figure out how to process them, as well as they were also getting COVID in the plants and having to shut the plants down.
Yeah, and on top of that, there were some ranchers who were previously selling to the plants who were cut out, and they wind up, especially with the hogs, they might use, instead of just selling to one of the big processors, they might try to find a local slaughterhouse, back things up even more for the small farmers and ranchers. So what's really happened, Michael, is that I think the Prime Act has been before Congress. This is like the fifth session, but it just looks like this is the best year for passage by far. This is the best chance it's had. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously the big reason is it can get in the Farm Bill. It could, it's not going to pass as a standalone the
Mhm.
way things are now, but when it's in the Farm Bill, it has a chance. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but it's looking better than it ever
Yeah.
has to this point.
So we've talked a little bit about it, mentioned it by name, the Prime Act. Talk a little bit more about like the specifics of that. It basically allows folks to bring animals to custom exempt plants. Give us the specifics of what the act would do.
Okay, so it allows a rancher to bring an animal to a custom exempt plant and sell that animal within the state in intrastate commerce only. You
Mhm.
can't sell it across state lines. And right now, the way the Prime Act reads is you could sell that animal, the meat from that animal direct to the consumer. You could sell it at restaurants. You can sell it at grocery stores. And I think the reality is if the Prime Act passes, not all that is going to be in place. I mean, the
Mhm.
most likely candidate to get cut out is the grocery stores,
Mhm.
restaurants maybe, but if it does pass at a minimum, you've got direct to consumer sales. And it's not
Mhm.
only just the beyond that, it's also, it's called, the Prime Act stands for the Processing Revival and Intrastate Meat Inspection Act. And on the processing revival side, right now, if you want to sell all these value added products, like say sausage, jerky, or something like that, for just a lot of these individual products, you need a HACCP plan, which
Mm.
potentially is thousands of dollars for every plan. This,
Correct.
selling in the custom houses, you wouldn't need that. So it should, even if it's just a direct to consumer sales that passes, it should make it easier for farmers to make a living just selling the value added products with the reduced expenses that would bring on.
Yeah, because the value added is where the real money is made.
Yep.
And we're starting to see a massive, I mean, like carry a couple of products in our farm store. Roan sticks is one of them. And again, that's a completely processed product, and it's keeping a whole network of farmers alive producing pigs for that product. So, all right. So how can people make a difference? How can people help this pass?
Well, the lead sponsor, Tom Massey, says make 3 calls. Make one to your representative, and then make a call each of your senators. Right now, the Prime Act has 47 sponsors on the House side. On the Senate side, it's not quite as strong. It has 7 sponsors, but every sponsor makes a difference. It just creates more support for the legislation. Means that sponsor won't try to get that out of the Farm Bill when it's in there, and just it will increase the chances of passage. So it just every sponsor is a big deal at this
Mhm.
point. I think
And the how,
in 2020, when just COVID really drove up the meat sales, the Prime Act got up to 55 sponsors. But
Mhm.
that year it no Farm Bill, it didn't go anywhere. Now's the chance. And I think another thing is just, you Tom Massey's been in Congress 12 years now. You hope he stays on indefinitely, but I mean, he's the champion of the bill.
Mhm.
If he leaves Congress, there's just no one to pick up uh, from him to try and get the bill through into law. So he's there right now. I mean, he's doing, I think he's spent an incredible amount of time and resources that he has putting it toward this. He's, I think he's done some things to build up some political IOUs owed to him. And from what I can tell, he's trying to cash those in to pass the Prime Act.
And so this is House HR 2814. So when you mentioned to your congressperson, that's what you had mentioned. And then the Senate bill is 907. But if you go to the show notes for this episode, so thrivingfarmerpodcast.com, it'll be the latest episode on the page. You can see all the details and the link to find who your congressman or woman or senator would be. So you should have all the details over there. Pete, any final words?
Just the future is now. Just make those calls. Yeah, just keep on after them. If your representative won't co-sponsor now, keep on going. There's one of the people who's done a great job working for it is Cimbria Patterson out of Utah. And she's been able to get all of her representatives on board with the PRIMAC, one of the senators and one representative she was after for 4 months before he finally agreed to co-sponsor. So yeah, don't give, yeah, this is the best chance. This is the best shot we have. So keep going.
Yeah, don't give up. Make sure you keep on them. All right. And it's really important. I think the next couple of days are key. So make sure you do go ahead and give those calls in the next day or so people can hear from us right now when it's important. All right. Thanks so much for your time, Pete. Appreciate you coming on. And we will look forward to chatting with you again at some point.
All right, Michael. Thanks for your support for the PRIMAC.
Absolutely.